I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Musser. And we'll move on to public participation. Dr. White and Dr. Joyner.
Just trying to get a little bit organized. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just prior to public participation, please understand that public participation is a right that the board allows the public. We would ask that you be respectful and that you adhere to the 3-minute time. When I call time, please complete your sentence. Thank you very much. You have
Dr.
it.
John, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Our first speaker, Kelly Blanchett.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Going first. Okay, my name is Kelly Blanchett. My participation tonight should not be a surprise to the board. At least 4 of you received a letter from me on June 3rd documenting the intentional misconduct at LW Beecher and not following the terms of my child's media release, and how my legitimate takedown requests resulted in being blocked on Instagram by the school and a teacher. Beecher's actions are a violation of our media release and the First Amendment, backed up by recent Supreme Court precedents. Because I have not received a response, and since Beecher has been ignoring me since January, I'm here to ask a few things. First, how many of your students are survivors, refugees, undocumented, or simply minors who do not want their name, age, location, image, or enrollment advertised? How many of them are too young to say no to a teacher recording them? I also realize you have no idea why I signed my child's media release as decline, and I do not have to tell you. All you need to know is that I did not consent to Beecher putting my child on social media, with identifying details no less, multiple times across multiple social media platforms. I did not deserve to be treated the way that I was for advocating for my family. If any of you had asked Beecher to take down images of your children, would you have been blocked and ignored? If not, then why did I deserve it? Therefore, I'm again asking you that you have Beecher and its affiliates take down the images and unblock my account. And it would be nice to get an apology for the stress you have put on my family. The biggest thing I'm asking for tonight is change. There aren't just images of my child still online. There are, by my estimation, thousands of images of New Haven Public School students on your affiliate social media channels, likely without families realizing. Create a committee that will write policy for how administrators and teachers should ensure that media releases are followed. Educate your staff and students on media literacy and internet safety, as recommended by the Department of Education in 2020. If you won't do that, ask yourself why you feel so entitled to publish children on social media. You invited the public to speak at this meeting, but I did not invite you to do anything but teach and keep my child safe under your care. Take down the images, unblock my account, ensure your students' safety now and in the future. I look forward to a response to my letter.
Our next speaker, Rebecca Michelson.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rebecca Michelson. I am a art teacher at Dr. Mayo Early Childhood School, and I'm here to speak in regard to funding for our schools. Not for the first time. I have spoken about this a few times, and I'm going to just kind of reiterate a few things I've already said at various other meetings. Connecticut is a state of staggering wealth disparity, and the resources for a healthy society have always existed, but disparities in power have led to its consolidation in the hands of a few. In case it has not been made evident, trickle-down economics does not, in fact, trickle down. And we need our elected officials to see to it that their elected power can be a safeguard for such inequality. Money is power, and too often power is confused for unchecked privilege rather than the responsibility that it is. Education could be a phenomenal equalizer in society, but only if education is actually equitable, and it isn't. It has never been clear to me, neither as a child nor as a 42-year-old, why a rising tide raising others' ships would disconcert some people. But, the more educated our fellow humans are, the better able we will all be to keep each other and ourselves accountable. I have advocated for fully funded schools based on the needs of the populations of each community multiple times. We all benefit, even those who feel their place on the top of such a steep hierarchy is threatened. Public education hasn't always had a forward-thinking, progress-oriented methodology, but we're working hard to make it so, and we need resources to make it happen. There's no doubt in my mind that currently, in our current system, our needs come with a paywall. And if we don't get the money to meet these needs, we are going to continue to have underserved children. When I think about the last time I was at a BOE meeting and people from Hill House were talking about the frustrations they were dealing with their students in the high school level, I'm looking at the things we're trying to do with my preschoolers and how if we can't meet those needs at those insanely important foundational and formative years, and then we're playing catch up for the rest of their educational lives. It's just a travesty that we haven't made education and our future and our children the #1 priority. As a nation, we tend to spend lives to save money rather than spending money to ultimately save lives. And that seems hyperbolic as I'm sitting here talking about funding a preschool, except it's not. The only way we can get to a country that's ever been as great as we pretend it is if we actually take care of each other. Humans are by nature a pro-social cooperative species. And it's not because of our worst antics that we are still alive on this planet today. It's in spite of them. It's because of our default setting to ultimately be the type of entities that care for
Ryan,
each other. And we need to make that a priority. Thank you.
thank you for acknowledging the time.
Our next speaker, Hyclus Williams.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the rest of the staff that are here today. And my name is Hyclus Williams. I am the president for the Paraprofessional Local 3429. I'm also a former parent and a grandparent at the Board of Education. And today I'm here to talk about the funding situation. We want our students to get the best quality education they can receive. That means we need the best quality staff that we can find. We have to change the way we do business in New Haven Public Schools. The way we've been doing business is just not working. We have to realign things and we have to do it differently. We have to use the monies in a different way. The little grandma, grandpa, uncle, auntie thing has to be done. We need to do things in a way that everybody can participate, everybody can have a little say so. We just had the SOP with our superintendent, which was a great way of us sitting down in one room and making plans as to what we're going to do for the future of our students. And I think when it comes to the budget, we need to find a way to do something like that, to determine there are so many different ways we can make things happen. We have students that can do some things, that earn some monies. We got to change things. We definitely have to change things because the monies are just not coming in. And then when they do come in, they're not going out the right way. We have a new superintendent for schools, and we can't set her up for failure. We've been through too many superintendents, and once monies don't come in right, and once the funds are not distributed right, and the students are not getting the education they need, and failure, which we have been failing, continues to happen, then what? They throw it on the superintendent and say she's not doing or he's not doing their job, and then we have a new person. We have a qualified superintendent right here, and we need to support her. We need to give her what she needs to make it happen. And we all need to be on board with this. There's no staff to cut. We don't have enough staff as it is. There is no way we should have anything in the paper talking about cutting staff. I know for sure that a paraprofessional has at least 40-something vacancies right now, and there will be more coming down the line because we can't get fair or living wages. So it's gonna be cutting, cutting, cutting. We're not gonna have staff, we're not gonna have qualified staff because we're not paying qualified people to work. So that's gonna be the mess we're gonna have come September. Okay? Let me see what else I didn't talk about it. I wrote down here. Yes, we need to work more collaboratively. We need to ensure public participation. And we need equity and justice for all, and I mean all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Maria Therese Serrano.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Maria 3 Serrana. I'm the mother of John Carlos Master here. I am here. I'm glad I came after Highcliffe because I know I've spoken before on behalf of the para educators. I work as a para educator for more than a year. And now I am speaking on behalf of our substitute teachers. Because aside from the para educators who are actually helping our schools run business as usual with the really very deep shortage in our teaching staff, the substitute teachers are actually there helping run our schools. Now, my problem, I am highly educated. I would have to say, I was a long-term substitute in science at Wilbur-Cross. I'm in the process of getting my elementary education certification at Sacred Heart University. I'm doing my master's in teaching. In the meantime, while doing my praxis exams and all other exams, I worked as a substitute teacher, so I would really know how it is to work in a high school setting where my son goes to school. So I was a substitute for a long-term sub. The teacher I was subbing for gave birth. She was on maternity leave from November until February. So that's about 56 days. So the thing with the paras the substitute teacher is that we're only paid $105 a day, no benefits, nothing else. Now, it says in the contract, after 45 days of working as a substitute teacher, you become a member of the union. And by 46th day until the 75th day, then you will be paid 135 day. Only if you get to the 75th day from the 46th day in the same position. So basically, I worked as a long-term substitute teacher for the teacher who gave birth for 56 days. I was not entitled to the 136 days, $136 a day of pay. Now, why am I saying this? Because I think the work that they expect you with $105 a day is basically to babysit your kids. I was teaching human physiology and pharmacology. I was reading all the work that are not multiple choice answers. The teacher is very diligent. She left a lot of work and a lot of slides, and we really did a lot of learning in the class, hands-on learning, because I'm trained as an educator. And as a teacher, I was doing this out of passion, but I was just looking on behalf of all the substitute teachers, why they're basically just sitting right behind the desk. There are so many classes in New Haven Public Schools that have been run by substitute teachers for years since the pandemic. And this is the situation. There is no motivation for substitute teachers to be working, even if they would love to, because they cannot be, it is so disrespectful that I have to fight to be even paid, because the worst, to make things worse, during my prep time when I'm supposed to be checking, I was also doing other substitute for assignment for other teachers who are not around. So I didn't even have time to do my own prep. So thank you, and I hope that someone would really speak for the substitute teachers too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leslie Blateau.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leslie Blatteau. I'm a teacher and parent in New Haven, and I'm the president of the New Haven Federation of Teachers. So now that we've received the updated and approved budget numbers from the state of Connecticut and from our city representatives, we realize that New Haven Public Schools, at least for next year, will not be a fully funded school district. And our students will not have full access to the range of educational opportunities and support that they deserve. So our Union Community Coalition is calling on the New Haven Board of Education to staff our schools. I want to recognize New Haven's forward thinking with how we hired additional teachers with federal COVID relief funds. We've avoided layoffs because of our approach. As new vacancies became available due to resignation and retirements, the ESSER teachers who stayed were moved into general funds positions, and they're working hard right now to meet the needs of our kids. I also want to highlight the collaboration between New Haven Public Schools and NHFT with respect to the recent right-sizing process. An analysis of staffing and enrollment was completed, and as a result, teachers in schools with lower enrollment are moving to current vacancies for next year. Again, this has been a collaborative process where the contract was followed. While it's not ideal to have to leave a school you love, the central pillars of equity and transparency have guided this work. And now here we are, waiting to see which positions will be part of the 61 proposed positions to be cut as of last week's Finance and Operation meeting. I want to restate that there are no cuts left to be made to our classrooms, to our schools, and to our student-facing staff. We need more, not less support for our students. Overall, we should be working to lower class size, not work at the contractual maximum. I attended the New Haven Scholarship Fund last night, where over 100 seniors got scholarships for their plans for life after high school. That work is a direct result of our school counselors. We need more school counselors and not less. Our social workers are completing their end-of-year reports. Many of them have attended over 100 PPTs this year alone. We need more social workers, not less. Our students with special education needs deserve more paras for increased one-on-one support. And our educators need caseload caps so we can ensure compliance with our students' IEPs. Our students deserve fully staffed and fully stocked libraries so they can put their improved reading skills to work, so they can develop a love of reading, because that's fostered by having access to a library, not simply by monitoring progress on a computer program. I could go on and on. Art, music, outdoor ed, local history, before and after school, field trips. I was lucky to go to a family member's kindergarten promotion event today at one of our New Haven schools. Those kindergartners, as a result of the expertise at the school and the ESSER funds, had a year they will never forget. All of our students deserve that from now and ongoing. Fund our schools, staff our schools. Let's commit to strengthening this coalition so we can ensure our students have access to the schools that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melody Gallagher.
Good evening. My name is Melody Gallagher. I'm a resident of New Haven, a Wilbur-Cross teacher, and a New Haven Federation of Teachers member. Tonight, I would like to make 2 points about community, its importance, and my interpretation of it. It's been a while since I've came to an in-person BOE meeting. I used to come consistently for years, pre-March 2020. Many folks in this room can attest to that. I'm also a big believer in community and the trust that can be built through authentic community events. I did see some food here otherwise, but there used to be like New Haven Public School dinner served here too. Whereas I appreciate being able to watch live, and I think that the practice should continue, I believe that if these meetings are truly to be an extension of our community, then all BOE members need to be present and in person. I hope that this can be considered for future meetings. I'm also here because my students deserve the world. They deserve the best, and the future of the community of New Haven depends on it. I've said it here before many times, and I've said it at the Board of Alders multiple times, and I'm saying it here now. We need you. I'm looking at you, each and every one of you, to join us in assuring that our students get all that they deserve. in the form of funding from our community, our state, and the federal government. We cannot afford to wait any longer, and it's going to take a community to get it done. The last point I want to make is the first BOE meeting that I watched that was hybrid a year ago, I think. What I really appreciated was Dr. Yarbrough, who was sitting here at the time, and everyone else that was sitting here at the time was looking at the speaker. And I want to say I really, really appreciated that. It's not something that has always happened, so seeing you all do that now when people come up here to speak does make a difference. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ife Waters.
My name is Najija Ife Waters. Let me start my timer because I swear Dr. John, the timer would be different from mine. All right. My name is Najija Ife Waters. I didn't want to come here tonight. I really did not want to come to here tonight. But because of the executive team giving me a call today with some bull, and I'm going to say that, okay, Dr. Negron, we had a very positive meeting, and we talked about the future. And one of the biggest things in the future that we spoke on was about policy. I've been coming to this podium for 10 years talking about policy. We are where we at right now today because there is no order in this district. There is no structure. We don't have the right people at the table. And that's starting from being top heavy. If you want to talk about budget and changing budget, let's get rid of some of these people at the top because obviously they don't know how to do their job. My son missed a milestone, and that was something that you was against, Dr. Negron. I made an email back in the beginning of May. I got a phone call today, and the person started out, the individuals started out with the, I talked to someone. There was no evidence, and everyone knows me in this district. When I come up here, I come with facts. I stand on facts. I stand on policy. I don't stand on hearsay whatsoever, because hearsay is no good for us. But people, this is a design. School to prison pipeline. We keep talking about it, but this is the beginning of it. This is the beginning of it. My son, for 2 years, did not get fed by this district because of his life-threatening allergies. Take a look at that. I gave you the Connecticut General Statutes because you got policies that says 1997, 2018, and so forth. My son got punished for a policy that doesn't exist in this district. It's called the cell phone policy. My son is a special education student. You talk about, they have his poor parent all over the place because they couldn't put whoever, wherever they're supposed to put him at. But this is the problem. The problem is the policy. When there is no structure, there is no order, it's nothing but chaos. But that's the design. And you know what? It's our fault. Because you know why? When it comes down to voting, guess what we do? We keep putting the same people over and over. If people can't show you that they have done something productively for us, for our children, why in the world are we keep voting for them? Why? Why are we going to more meetings, governors meetings, financial meetings? Why don't we go there? So instead of just pointing at them, we need to start pointing at us. When are we going to do something different? Because when we know better, we do better.
Our next speaker is Sloan Williams.
Good evening. My name is Sloan Williams. I am a music teacher over at Bernard K through 8 school, which is absolutely fabulous. And as a matter of fact, we just finished doing our first ever Little Mermaid musical which was a big success. But I'm here today because one, I'm not here to fight the board, but I'm actually here because I want to support it. I want to support change, and I especially want to support our students. Because I'm on the front lines, I see how our students struggle every day. I see, heartbreaking situations that they're in. And all I can say is that we need every single teacher that we have and every single para there. I come from a family of educators. My mother was a dean of a college at Derry College up in New Hampshire. My father is one of the first African-American teachers at Federal City College when it was Federal City College. It's now UDC. And also as a staff trainer in Washington, D.C. in the 60s. And my aunt, well, there's two actually. There's my uncle who taught at Yale University at the School of Music. He was one of the first African-American professors there. And my aunt, who was in administration, Emma Ruff, who was a principal, started in English and went all the way through to support and serve this community. Students and their welfare is very important to me. And I am here to work with the board. I'm here to work with anybody. Please call on us. We're here for you. We can do a lot more if we're working together. If we're fighting, our students suffer immensely. So it's time for us to come together as a community and support them. If we need to find funding, I'm sure there's ways we can do it together, and that's the key. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Vicky Grubar. Ms. Grubar, you may speak. She's online.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You may start.
Good evening. This is Vicky Gruba, PTA board member and parent of 2 children at Worthington Hooker. I'm one of several parents and staff who shared public comment regarding the lack of nurse at our K-2 building, including attending a meeting in person back in March. I regret my schedule hasn't permitted me to attend in person since, but I wanted to publicly express my most sincere gratitude for the action taken by Mayor Elliker, Director Maritza Bond, with the support of Superintendent Negron and the board. We have had a full-time dedicated nurse in our Cannon Street building for over a month now, following a few weeks of rotating nurse coverage, which was also a welcome interim solution. I've heard nothing but wonderful things about Nurse Amanda, and the difference that it's made in our school is immeasurable. Students can now have their health needs addressed by a qualified health professional privately in the nurse's office. Parents have the peace of mind that there's a nurse available to assess and treat the minor bumps and bruises, as well as, heaven forbid, a serious health concern or injury. Teachers and staff are able to focus on learning primary classroom and administrative responsibilities versus having to address the many fevers, cuts, head bumps, stomach bugs, et cetera, that come up multiple times a day in an elementary school. My sole purpose today is to reiterate my gratitude to Mayor Elliker, Director Bond, Superintendent Negron, and the full board for their support and action on behalf of the Hooker community. Have a great summer.
Madam President, that concludes all speakers.
Madam President, I'd like to thank the speakers that honored the time. This is certainly a great thing, and it also helps us work better together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner and Dr. White. I'm gonna move up before the action items, Dr. Negron's athletic acknowledgements. Go ahead, Dr. Negron.
Thank you, President Rivera. Good evening, board. It is with great pleasure that I take a moment to present to you the Lady Academics Track and Field Team. The James Hillhouse High School Girls Track and Field Team of 2024 carried on their winning tradition and accomplished great feats. They not only successfully won the indoor state championship, but they also won it the previous year in 2023. Building on their previous success, they went even further by winning both the Outdoor Southern Connecticut Conference and the Double M Class Championships. Despite facing challenges and uncertainties along the way, the Lady Academics track and field team proved their place in history. Congratulations, ladies. And we do have a small token. I am going to invite them to come up for a small token of appreciation. And I will ask, before I do that, I do want to thank their coaches, Gary Moore, Michelle Moore, and Dale Brown. Thank you so much for the support that you lend them to get to where they are. And now I'm going to ask Eric Pachowski to help me to present the small token. So if we could get Yonea Knox to come up. Congratulations. Shalisha Robertson. Congratulations. Karina Conley. Deanna Moore. Tatiana Gaither. Daria Vargas. Cassandra Claremont. Amaya Ellis. Trinity Mooring. And Melody Gordon. And we do have one additional recognition, but I am going to ask our athletic director to make that special recognition.
So first, congratulations, ladies. Second year in a row. You were making it very difficult for me to budget my balance with these rings I have to keep getting for you guys, but congratulations. I want to give two special awards away. We have two athletes here, one on the girls track team and one on the boys. Both are McDonald All-American. Linnea Knox is a top 25 hurdler in the United States of America. She's an All-American. She has a full scholarship to college next year. She was indoor SEC Athlete of the Year, and she's now Outdoor Athlete of the Year. And she's also New Haven Athletics Public Schools Female Athlete of the Year. Congratulations. And I'd like to honor Khalil Antoine. He also was the indoor athlete of the year for track and is now the SEC outdoor athlete of the year. He's a top 10 high jumper in the United States of America. He's an All-American. He is nominated as Nationally McDonald's All-American of the Year. Khalil Antoine. Going to Holy Cross College next year on the scholarship. I'm gonna finish.
Listen, we're going to take every opportunity to celebrate, and this is something to be celebrated.
Oh, yeah. Congratulations to the athletes and their coaches. It's great to see good things are still happening in New Haven Public Schools. Okay, and we will move on now to the approval of the meeting minutes of May 28th. There a motion to approve, Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I move we approve the minutes of May 28th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Ms. Downer, and any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the meeting minutes of our May 28th meeting. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, and so that motion carries.
Madam President, I'm here as well, and I'm a yes.
Oh, Mayor Elicker, thank you. Didn't realize you were on already. Okay, and so that motion passes. The next item is the amendment approval of the 10-month calendar. And Dr. Negron, will you be discussing that item?
Yes, we had taken another look at the proposed, the 10-month calendar, looking at the fact that we had Monday, December 23rd. We've heard additional feedback after it was approved from the union as well as public comment. I think it was maybe the last board meeting or the meeting before. Also took a close look at our data, as we usually do, around attendance. We're very concerned that leaving it as an open day on that Monday, that it may lead to great number of not only student absences, but staff absences. And also looking at when the year would end. The approved calendar places out at the last day on a Monday, just similar to this year, which we know is going to be extremely difficult. If we amend the calendar, we would close on that Monday, the 23rd, bringing then the last day of school to that Tuesday in June. So I'm asking the board to consider making that amendment.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, thank you. I move that we approve the amended 10-month calendar for the 24-25 school year.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Yarborough. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the amended 10-month calendar for the 2024-2025 school year. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. And so that motion carries. And the next item is the personnel report, Dr. Niven.
I am asking for approval of the personal report.
There a motion to approve? Mr. Wilcox?
I move that we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Yarborough, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well, and so that motion also carries.
And if I may, Chair, I would like to just highlight, as I usually do, and acknowledge the folks that are retiring, as you have approved on the personal report, starting with Donna Bartlin, a math teacher over at Beecher, retiring at the end of June. She has served for 13 years. Judy Kavanaugh, an art teacher at Worthington Hooker, also retiring at the end of the year. She has served for 26 years. Geraldine Salters, an itinerant instructional math coach, also retiring on June 30th, has served for 26 years. Dr. Derek Michael Stroud, foreign language teacher at Hill Regional Career High School, who has served for 25 years. Shirley Cannon, a pre-K assistant teacher at County West, retiring on June 10th. She has served for 14 years. Sharon Moore, pre-K assistant teacher at Salentano Magnet School, also retiring on June 30th. She has served for 29 years. Joey Carter, a general worker at Clemente Leadership Academy, retiring on June 17th. She has served for 15 years. Lansley Gay, a site coordinator at Gateway, retiring on June 30th, who has served for 16 years. Again, I would like to wish everybody congratulations on their retirements. That concludes my personal report.
Thank you, Dr. Negron, and congratulations to the retirees. Okay, our next item are finance and operations. Mr. Wilcox?
All right, thank you very much. Before I get started, just see if anybody would like anything moved separately this evening. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion then, and that is I move that we approve the 4 abstracts, 4 agreements, 2 amendments, the 2 purchase orders, and the 1 contract as listed on our agenda and as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Yarborough, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote to approve the F&O items as presented. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. And so that motion carries. And we'll move on now to the students' report. Mr. Musser. What do you need? Oh.
Just go into presentation mode. Yep, great. There you go. So students report, this is about the May 25th, Student Council citywide meeting. Next slide, please. So basically, the email that Wilcox sent me an email regarding disciplinary code used by administration in New Haven Public Schools. And in a previous meeting, we had talked about things regarding student accountability when it came to things like infrastructure, vandalism, et cetera. And so I thought it'd be interesting to go into the disciplinary action, reaction to disruptions, et cetera. So I went over the code of conduct, which was adopted on February 8th, 2021. And I really focused on the restorative justice aspects to the disruptive behaviors. And after presenting it, I asked students questions. How well is the code of conduct enforced at your school? Are there any offenses that you are wondering about? And what are your thoughts about this policy? And do you think it will be effective? Next slide, please. And so I found out that many students reported that most disruptive actions, the consequences were very severe and they had no characteristics of restorative justice. A student mentioned that to some degree, there was victim blaming and sexism. Specifically, a female student expressed that when it came to sexual assault, admin/faculty accused the way she dressed instead of the person who assaulted her. Another student mentioned that attempts at her school for restorative justice proved ineffective. Another student expressed that even a small disturbance, and this was accidentally throwing a packet of mayonnaise, led to really severe punishments. And I believe he told me he got IS for it or something of that line. So in general, students believe that restorative justice policies were not enforced and they were unsatisfied with how their school handled justice. Students expressed that this was a day-to-day experience. So it wasn't something that happened once every while. Another thing we discussed is future things we could talk about as students, as a student body. I feel like it'd be really useful if we use those meetings, the citywide meetings, as a way to synthesize student frustration. And so I asked the student councils if they think it'd be a good idea if each student council will report at their school regarding the atmosphere, the learning facilities, and if I, the student representative, would synthesize that and report it at the student reports, the time given to me during the Board of Education meetings. The students said, however, because of elections, that this would have to wait till the middle of the year. But I believe with the help of the rising junior student representative that I could get this jump-started and probably get something by November. Students also said it would be fine. It would be a little bit difficult to find a consistent person to make the reports, but I doubt that. I think I could find a really responsible student. There's already a couple candidates I have in mind, and students are also aware that a lack of behavior, a lack of discipline also contribute to the problems at their school, mainly teachers leaving the district. So my questions for the BOE is, what does the BOE think of the idea of the students report that I just mentioned? And what would you like to see in the report? Any specific categories? And another is, how are we dealing with the lack of restorative justice implementation? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Musser. Questions or comments from the board for Mr. Musser? Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to our student representatives for addressing this, for bringing it before the rest of the student council members and having those discussions about student code of conduct, how it's implemented unevenly still in the district 3 years after it was passed. A lot of work still needs to happen. So I appreciate that the students are also going to be highlighting that and looking at that as the years go forward. I had the occasion to attend the ceremony at the museum, not the museum, I'm sorry. The gun violence memorial, victims of gun violence, this Saturday. I'm sorry, I'm garbling it. Botanical garden, exactly. So it was a very powerful time, and it was wonderful hearing people coming together to celebrate something so horrible. And I couldn't help but think as I was listening to people reading the names, which included, our mayor and our superintendent and chief of police and others that are along with the mothers and the fathers and the brothers and sisters, et cetera. Reading those names is how important it is to have things like this in the schools, because it helps show people different ways of handling things than pure punitive ways of doing things. And so I'm hoping we can continue to make progress on this. It's challenging with all the budget cuts. We have shortages in every area, including in the people that actually could do the work and do the training around this, but it is important. So I just want to thank our student representatives again for talking about this and raising the issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Yarborough?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moser, for presenting this and also having a conversation with the student leaders, the representatives from the various high schools. A direct response to your first question, I do think a report would be valuable. I appreciate the students willing to give their experiences and to describe what they see happening in their schools. Maybe also, I'm a big fan of complete data. So if there's an opportunity to have some of the administrators or others also give information in the report in terms of incidences and maybe steps that were taken and whether or not and what restorative practices were attempted, that might help us to have a picture of what's occurring. I would also be interested in knowing if our student leaders think from their own position, whether there's something they can contribute towards helping to reduce any incidences that occur, or also their role in restorative practices. So essentially the culture of each particular school. But I thank you for taking the lead on this. I also appreciate not just your optimism about perhaps having something by November and being able to identify people who can help with the report, but with your optimism, you have a plan. So I really respect that. So thank you very much for coming forward and talking about this.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Dr. Joyner?
I'd like to thank John Carlos for taking this initiative as well. Clearly, if you look at what's going on in the country and in the world, we need a peace movement. What I think might be helpful in a report is that, one, it should be evidence-based. Because when you throw out terms without any category of definition, it's important to make sure there's evidence to back up whatever claims or findings. Actually, when you have findings, you should have evidence that justify the findings. It also would be helpful to have categories of disruptive conduct, because disruption is on a continuum, with something like talking out of turn all the way up to fighting and destroying property. I'm wondering how much peer pressure can be used positively and how we can create incentive for kids that might be prone to disruption. That would be very helpful. And as far as restorative practices, that really is a consequence of principal leadership. Each school has to have a leader that believes in restorative justice, a leader that can build relationship with students that are at great risk of acting out, and do those kinds of things with those students that would have them value school and value the people that teach them. From the standpoint of the educator, teaching a class is a very delicate proposition. All it takes is one moment of unrest to turn the class around and have it go in a different direction. And so it's really important that you understand that you cannot have effective learning without a safe and orderly environment. And I don't think teachers signed up to have to break up fights and all those other kinds of things, because there's no place for fighting in a school. And somebody has to be brave enough to say that in the student body as well, that you want a school that's characterized by peace and mutual respect. I've seen the upside and the downside of all of this in my 50+ years of being an educator. And if we can convince everybody in the building to obey the golden rule, that'd be a right step. And if we could get kids involved in activities that can take them away from disruption, that's also a right step. It's very complicated. It's very complicated because oftentimes people who disrupted in schools are disruptive in their own homes and in their own neighborhoods. And so it is difficult. There are no easy answers, but I commend you at your young age for investigating the issue and trying to do something about it. It also might be helpful, if you think about what Dr. Yarbrough said, is that for you to have a template for the report so that you can have a wide range of data, and whatever claims you make, you have solid evidence to back it up. But I'd like to ask two questions. One, what are the consequences of consistent disruption in schools and in classroom? And what is the consequence for a person who is consistently disrupted? That's where mental health services come in. And sadly, there are so many cases that are so severe that people reject mental health services. I've mentored a lot of kids over my lifetime, and you can only help people who are willing to help themselves and who are willing to commit to peaceful relationship with others. Again, it's hard to do. It's harder now than probably any other time in our history, because we have people at the very top of our society that are encouraging disruption. And I would hope that you can use your influence and your fellow students to help kids understand that no matter what they see adults doing, if it's wrong, then they should go the other way. I've had my moments, but thankfully they've only been a few. So again, thanks a lot, and keep up the good work. If there's any way that I can be helpful, let me know. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll move on. Oh, Dr. Negron?
Thank you, President Rivera. I just wanted to reiterate for the board that in our strategic operating plan, the one that we built collaboratively, right? One of the priorities that we spoke about had to do with culture and climate, and that we set out to ensure that we are developing a focused and coherent and actionable plan, because we know this is work that is not just going to be a one and we're done. This really has to have intentionality. And I just want to lift again that priority clearly speaks about the work that we want to do in terms of increasing student engagement and student empowerment, and that it does speak about leveraging the voice of students to engage with us in this work around school culture. So I do want to say that it is part of the plan. It is one of the strategies, and I am so excited to hear that the students are also excited about this work. And again, I just want to reiterate to people that yes, we have to do this work, but I really believe that to do this work right, it has to be coherent. There has to be a clear plan. It has to have intentionality, so that it's all of us working towards creating these outcomes. If we piecemeal it, my fear is that we piecemeal it, we put Band-Aids, and at the end of the day, we're not going to solve anything, and we're going to be back to the starting point. So all I'm saying is I'm excited, and we're looking forward to partner with you, the juniors, and Dr. White, who's going to be leading the strategy. And again, I'm glad that you guys are as excited as we are to bring student voice into this work to help us lift this so much needed work throughout our district.
Great, thank you, Dr. Negron. Mr. Musser? We'll move on to the remaining items of the superintendent report. Dr. Negron?
Thank you. Today, in continuing with our work, everybody knows that as a board, you approved a climate resolution. It is something that we have continued to work on aggressively as a district. And we wanted to take an opportunity today to give you an update as to the work that we are doing towards climate resolution as it relates to our curriculum connections. This is one part of it. There's also going to be another part in which we're going to talk a little more about in terms of what we're doing on the operational side. But today I do want to invite our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Keisha Red-Hannons, to join me along with our Supervisor of Science, Robert McCain, and our Supervisor of Social Studies, Sandra Clark, to just share with you some of the work that has been going again as it relates to climate resolution. So I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Red-Hannons.
Good evening, board, and to the public. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to talk about climate and climate justice. It's so important that we have this opportunity to talk about our climate resolution. Dr. White, if you can go to the next slide, that the board approved September 26 and 22. And so this is the first time that we're coming before you to address what updates we've made to the curriculum and what connections that exist within our current curriculum. As you know, climate justice is critically important. We all are living it and experiencing it every day, whether through weather, whether through other type of phenomenon that we are experiencing. And it may not impact us wholly, but we know it definitely will impact our kids as well as our grandkids and great-grandkids, God willing, if I'm still alive. With that said, we need to think about how can we reduce the negative health impacts that it has on our families, and in particular, as we look at Black and Brown communities such as New Haven. And so tonight, you'll hear from our science supervisor, Robert McCain, as well as our social studies supervisor, Ms. Sandra Clark. So I invite Supervisor McCain to the mic.
Good evening, everybody. So our science district mission is pretty simple. Empower learning, unleash talent, and lead a culture of creativity to explain and act upon real-life problems. There probably isn't a bigger real-life problem than climate change and what's going on in the world right now. This is something that we address in our classrooms pretty much every day. The next slide shows our pathways. We have pathways from grades 6 through 12. The first one is environmental engineering. The next one is bioscience and manufacturing, robotics, and computer science, all having to do with climate change. Next slide. In climate change, people always think about the weather. They think about the seas rising and what's going to affect. What people don't stop to think about is the health effects. We are in a bioscience city, led by Yale, led by all of these great industry partners that we have in New Haven, thinking about health. And when you think about that, you think about we're about to go into a heat wave in Connecticut. Do all of our people in New Haven have air conditioners? Or are we going to run into respiratory issues where people are going to be in emergency rooms because they can't breathe? And that happens all the time. Heat-related issues in inner cities, especially ones that are on the coast, is a rise in temperature, a rise in humidity. It makes it very difficult for people to breathe at that time. Also, the waterborne illnesses and diseases that occur because you have a lot of rain and standing water. You have mosquitoes that go and breed and continue to breed and continue to bring West Nile virus and other diseases. You also have microorganisms who also are breeding at the same time because of all this water that's standing around. You have things that you don't think about, such as the reality that animals on this planet are going to give humans diseases. And that's a direct revolve around climate change and what we're doing. Malnutrition, because we can't make enough food. There are going to be water wars. They say in the next 30 years, water will become the most valuable asset that we're going to have on this earth, more so than gold. You think about the mental and psychological ramifications of not having food, not having water, not being able to breathe, and what that brings upon us. So this is happening in real life. This is what we're doing now. Thankfully, we do live in a city that has great hospitals and great industry partners that are working towards this. Next slide. So in our school system, what are we doing? So this is a chart that shows K through 5, what we teach in science. We adopted a program called Smithsonian Science, and it's led by the 4 core discipline ideas that the NGSS has, the Next Generation Science Standards, which are the standards we follow. There are only 4 of them: life science, earth and space, physical science, and engineering. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see the green and purple, which are life sciences and earth and space sciences. Almost every one of those going down that we teach in every grade level, K-5s, deals with climate change. And you can just read the titles of some of those things. For example, how does weather and climate affect our lives? What evidence do we have of changing Earth? These are things that we teach our students every day by hands-on activities. Next slide. We continue into middle school. We adopted a brand new Smithsonian middle school curriculum this year, or standards this year. And again, you can see that in grade 6, which are embedded pathways, environmental engineering, one of our pathways, you can see that the first 2 out of the 3 modules we teach for the whole year have to do with climate change. In grade 7, it's the same thing. 2 of the 3 modules we teach has to do with climate change. And in grade 8, we start off the year with Earth's dynamic systems, which is all about climate change. Next slide. So when you think about that, you think about how does it connect to the high school? In the high school, we have a brand new curriculum we're writing now called Integrated Science, and it's based on earth and space science. So you can see the repeat coming all the way back to kindergarten, when we were talking about earth and space science as one of our embedded DCIs through the NGSS. In high school, in grade 9, 4 of the 6 units deal directly with climate change to educate our students at a much higher level. And what we've also done since the opening of the Peabody Museum, which we're so thrilled with, we decided that we needed to connect with Peabody and connect the units we teach. For example, in 3rd grade, how do we protect our animals when the habitat changes is the name of one of our sections, obviously dealing with climate change. And Yale Peabody Museum has worked with us to have a adaptations segment of their museum that will teach that for us. So when we bring our 3rd grade to Yale Peabody, we're going to directly teach them about climate change. In grade 4, you can see, grade 6, and in grade 9, we're going to have direct correlations at the Peabody Museum to what we teach in classes. So when they go to Peabody, it's not just about seeing the entire museum, but specifically about climate change and what we're trying to do about that. So at this time, I'd like to turn over to Supervisor Sandra Clark.
Thank you, Mr. McCain. Good evening, everyone. As Mr. McCain has shared with us, the curricular connections in science that have been most recently mandated. It's required in science classes. I'm going to take a few minutes to go over the next few slides, which give you a glimpse at the way the Social Studies Department is addressing climate change. First, I'm going to read an excerpt from the department's mission statement, just to clarify what best characterizes our objectives for students, or what does shed some light on what we really want students to take away from their classroom experiences. So I'll just read here. New Haven Public Schools Social Studies K-12 is to support the development of active, informed, and responsible citizens. Students are provided with authentic learning experiences in order to reach their full potential and become productive members of a global society. And I just want to emphasize that goal of molding global citizens. And so what we are looking to do here is to sort of connect themes that we commonly associate with social studies, such as justice, equity, civic action, and within the focus on climate change, through project-based learning. We provide the space in the classrooms to apply our students' understandings of the content learned in science, the experiences within the goal of what we are guided by our national standards for social studies, the C3 framework. Next slide. And here I have our reframed definition of climate justice, because when we historically have thought about climate change, we have more closely focused on the ways in which climate disruption will ultimately impact future generations. However, the reality in that climate change is already impacting our society today. This new framing of climate justice allows our students to examine concepts such as equality, collective rights, and the historical responsibility for climate change. And we recognize how environmental factors disproportionately impact low-income communities, especially what we're learning in our classes in low-income areas of the Global South. I really would like to point out that in the lower right, the image directly is from our Climate Justice Schools initiative of the New Haven Climate Movement. This is a program that was inspired by students right here from New Haven, their desire for increased change curriculum in schools back in 2020, and in 2021, it was approved, to which we were excited in the social studies and other content areas to meet as it aligns with our department goals. Thus, we were able to connect to social issues that students today are most passionate about, and those topics that are more tangible to them. Next slide. Just to provide a few examples of current units we have listed here that are covered in our high school history program. We have industrialization for world history, global issues and movements of people, social and economic equity in U.S. history classes, and in civics units such that deal with the concepts of federalism and social justice. Next slide. One of the most important student outcomes is the understanding that students play an active role in the growing climate crisis. And I have provided this matrix for teachers within our departments, our social studies teachers, to reinforce classroom expectations for each grade, for middle school and high school at each grade level. Those benchmarks being a strong understanding, you can't really see the categories, but what they are, they have a strong understanding of what environmental justice is, the promotion of public health concerns, and the completion of inquiry-based learning projects and service projects. We've already seen some of these goals met in classrooms as students discuss compelling questions surrounding climate change and sustainability in Latin America, the preservation of the Amazon rainforest, Bolivian water wars, just to name a few of the topics students are interested in. Students have even began to initiate their own efforts to combat relevant issues in their own communities. I'm aware of students actually sending letters to our local legislation in regards to sanitations within New Haven. Next slide, please. This slide, you should leave us with the notion that we are actively working towards building the capacity for effective implementation and awareness of climate change through staff training, availability of resources, and design of student activities, all of which to set our students on the right course as active and productive citizens. Programming has been instrumental for our young student activists to achieve their vision. Most recent reports shared by 3 schools, I've been asked to highlight, New Haven Academy, High School in the Community, and Sound. Some activities that were done this year, they've already submitted their reports. We're looking for reports to come in from the other various high schools. Some of those projects consist of composting, competition across grades, climate change themed week, climate related school announcements and activities for homeroom classes, such as bottle and can drives, campus cleanups in school gardens, and more. Last, we can move to the last slide. I share this information and on the previous slide, both to recognize the work of New Haven climate movement, along with the district teachers, advisors, and there's a host of interns who work and will continue that work over the summer. The next steps are for the continued work with those partners. And one thing that I do want to highlight is the work that I'm doing with the Connecticut Climate Education Advisory Committee. This is where work is currently being developed to create a hub for districts throughout the state. It's a way in which we can guide the development of our own social studies hub in New Haven. And lastly, as we update social studies curriculum to reflect the new standards and areas of integration with our elementary language arts, you heard I've been reinforcing 7 through 12. Climate change will be a focus area in our elementary curriculum writing work in the upcoming months. And for high school, we would like to make it common practice for students to use climate education projects to fulfill a percentage of their required community service hours. It's a C3 framework. Thank you.
So we would just like to conclude by stating that it is critically important that we continue to educate our students for the world that we're living in now and the world of the future so that they're prepared to preserve our earth. Thank you.
That concludes that update. I don't know if you have any questions.
Questions or comments? Dr. Joyner?
Yes, I think this will give me an opportunity to let the world know how talented this department is and what great leadership it has. I look at a lot of things that I've done in other places across the country, and I believe very strongly that climate justice is systemic in our school district. And I think that the presentations by our esteemed science director and our social studies director show that we're doing that. What I don't want to be lost in all of this is that there was something in Mrs. Clark's presentation that talked about the disproportionate impact of climate injustice on poor communities of color, and that they're the ones that have the least power to affect change. And I would say to our climate activists, unless you can get at some of these corporations, unless you can develop lawyers that can file suits against these corporations that are violating the environment, and unless we can have some type of agreement with countries that actually have policies that contribute to the demise of the earth, then we may look back on today as the good old days. I was struck by what a young lady said at our last meeting about whether or not she should even have children. That's a real dilemma. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter who, instead of saying a traditional grace when we go out to eat, she thanks the earth. And she learned that from her kindergarten teacher, who's a South Korean gifted teacher. And they do climate stuff in that school all the time. So don't sleep on New Haven. All these criticisms about our school districts. If I had had the opportunity to get education, I got a good education at my school, but the options that are in this community, in this city, in this school district, for children who want to learn and who want to make a difference are superior to any of the surrounding towns or any other system in the state, quite frankly. And that's why so many people are sneaking into our district or coming into our district to go to, particularly to some of our theme schools. But the same opportunities are at Hill House and Cross as well. And there's a reason why we keep winning championships in all kinds of areas, because we have a population of parents and students who see this system as a benefit, and they work very hard to make sure that children take advantage of it. And we're just going to have to work on people who don't see that and who bring more, well, I won't say that, but who don't see it that way. But there's so many great options in this system. And I'm hoping that Ms. Red Handings can keep her team intact because she has a great team. They do a lot of good work, and many of them are graduates of this system. And so I'm very proud of you guys, and I appreciate the presentation that you did tonight. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Dr. Yarborough?
Thank you. Yes, I want to thank the team for your presentation. I appreciate the integration of climate education. So not just the science side, but also the social science side. As well, I appreciate your decisions around working with the various grades and not just offering climate as one subject within one grade level. It gives the opportunity for what is learned to be built upon across the years. And as well, I appreciate what was last mentioned in the presentation about a hub. And I do see that as an opportunity for us to learn what others are doing, but also for us to contribute our own best practices to other educational communities as we do this work to educate our students, our staff, and the students I know will go home and also share with their families. So thank you very much for your work and your leadership and for spearheading this.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. For my part, I want to say thank you for the presentation. You had me at heat waves and no water. But I'm hopeful that this is the group that's gonna help it all get a whole lot better. Thank you. And Dr. Negron, budget mitigation?
Yes. So the last update, I am going to invite our Chief Financial Officer, Linda Hannans. We have been continuing to work on our budget mitigation. I want to start by saying, as I did last week when I had an opportunity to speak with some of the news mediums, I am extremely grateful for the ongoing support that we have received from our not only local legislators, but state legislators who continue to support our work. I am grateful for the increases that we have seen in ECS. I am grateful for the increases that we have seen in ECS Alliance grant. So I want to make sure that that gets noted. But I also want to continue to say that when it comes to environments like ours, urban environments, the longer we go by not having our ECS formula fully funded, the longer we are going to be in this predicament. So we started with an 11.8 budget gap. I am grateful to Mayor Gallagher. Thank you so much for continuing to increase funding in the city budget to support the Board of Education. We did receive $5 million more to help us in 24-25. But again, you know that we have been short that 11.8. Chief Financial Officer Linda and her team has been helping us and members of cabinet to continue to look at everything. So right now we are, nothing has been easy, right? We have been going through efforts of realignment and going through what I've been calling the right sizing process. So I do want to thank the New Haven Federation of Teachers for the support and the collaboration, right, that we've been engaging over these months. So we have to continue to do further work there. We are seizing every opportunity around folks who are telling us, I am going to put in my retirement. Every time the retirement comes in, we're looking, okay, what position is it? Do we really need to fill it? The answer is yes, but then we say, but we have the gap. Can we afford to do something and not fill it? So those are the types of decisions that we're having to make. Looking again at vacancies and saying, well, maybe this is not the year that we fill it. So those are the tough decisions. But in looking at all of that, we are confident that we are going to be able to find another $1.8 million in that area. So that is what we are calling the realignment and the reduction in staff. As you heard in public comment, it's not easy because it means the combining that we had to do. Wherever there were small classes, we had to say, we're gonna combine, and that means who wants to volunteer to leave the school community and go venture out into another school community. So that is continuing to happen. We're looking now at other areas. We started by looking at core classrooms, right? The ELA, the math, the science, the social studies. We are continuing to look, what opportunities exist inside of PE, music, health, world languages. So all of that we're looking at. Continuing to talk about transportation and our routes. We are optimistic that we should be able to find about $1 million to mitigate there. We are looking at all the other contractual services. So here we are looking at things like overtime. There are things where community uses our buildings. Every time the buildings are used, it means that we have to have security there. We have to have custodians there. But what we're saying is those things we're gonna look and we're gonna say, no, not happening. Unless you are putting a program and inside the program, you built it so that you are covering the costs of our custodian and our security, that we're making cuts there. So those are the kind of cuts that we're looking to make, and we're hoping to find another $1.1 million there. We're looking at other contractual services that we have, things that we had and tools that we brought in even during the pandemic to enrich the teaching and the learning. But going back and saying, well, we don't have the luxury to have those tools anymore because we are mitigating a budget. So those things are also going to be cut. We have looked at every grant that we have. I'm sure you saw, right? There were increases that came in Alliance. We're looking to optimize and maximize those grants. What else can we do? How else can we shift? So we're hopeful that we're gonna be able to find 2.6 there. When we make those decisions, it means that discretionary dollars that often we will give to schools, then now we're going to say, well, you're gonna get less because we had to access some of that to mitigate the deficit. So right now, in what we've done in the last couple of weeks, we are still short. We are now looking at almost 4.2 that we still need to find. And again, we are doing the hardest to not have to say, we gotta let you go. But I know time is ticking. I have, today's Monday. We have the rest of this week on Monday. I want to at least give people the courtesy to say whether, yes, you have a job or you don't have a job. That is the very least that I can do for folks. So we are continuing to look at everything. I wish that I would get the gift that I'm seeing other districts get. I just saw in the news that I think it was Hamden talked about losing middle school sports, and Quinnipiac is coming to the rescue to support. So I'm hoping that, I don't know, somebody's gonna come to our rescue, that we have a great plan in what we wanna do, but we're still short. And again, I don't wanna seem ungrateful. I am grateful for the great things that our senators are doing, or representatives are doing. I'm sure you read in the Independent. Thank you, Maya. I think it was you who covered it. Right, we're getting funds that are going to be able to do the much needed repairs that we need to have at the Floyd Athletic Center. At one point, I was fearful that our fall athletes were not even going to be able to be there, but now they are because we got the support, right, from our state legislators to support that. The fact that we're gonna have a beautiful New Haven Adult Education Center, right? They put funding in there, and we're gonna be able to have it, be able to open 2026. We just graduated students last week. So we continue to do great things here in New Haven, You saw the athletes today. Um, Thank you, 145 that we graduated at adult ed. Again, great things continue to happen. We want to continue to do great things, but things are tight. And I have to tell you, I feel like I've done my due diligence, coming in new, not knowing I had the benefit to be able to ask all the questions, right? Because I was new. And be able to pick up every rock and be able to look underneath and be able to say, yes, that was nice that we did that, but now we can't. You hear people saying, well, we need this, we need this, we need this. People, I get it. We need lots of things. But I'm gonna look at these tough choices through the lens of our students. At the end of the day, I still have to make sure that our students are gonna get what they need so that we can ensure that they're meeting the requirements that they need as it relates to state. But we are in a very difficult situation. I do want to say I thank the people that came today, and thank you so much for wanting to work collaboratively in the work that we have ahead, but tough times are here. So that is where we are, and I have Linda with me in case there are questions or specifics.
Questions or comments for Dr. Negron? Ms. Downer?
Trying to find the right words to say. I was hoping that we wouldn't get here, but I must say, prevention is better than cure. Have we done the right thing? Have we put the policies in place? Have we used the money wisely? So right now, the children, our students are suffering. We made some actions, and they weren't good for this board, for this school system. And I just hope when the money do come in, that it's done right. The policies are in place. Price methodology is there. We owe it to the community. We owe it to the citizens of New Haven. We got paras here that's not making a living wage. Money come in, no one has an account. It's not used for the purpose that it was used for. We owe it to the community. I just think next time when the money come in, it's done right. And that's all I gotta say.
Dr. Joyner?
Actually, I think we have two major issues. And every major question is a moral question. If you look at the scope of history, when we brought the right answer morally to the equation, we got the civil rights movement, we got the women's rights movement, we got the voting rights movement. And unfortunately, the American city is between a rock and a hard place, because we're responsible for a disproportionate share of caring for the homeless, the unemployed, the addicted, and the mentally ill. We have a reduced tax base. And because we have that tax base, because we contain agencies and organizations that provide these services to the disadvantaged. If you look at the surrounding suburbs, if you look at the large towns and the towns in the state that have more money for education, they don't have drug addiction centers. They don't have mental health centers. They don't have that. They come to us for that. And we're also the place of refuge for new and undocumented immigrants fleeing poverty and injustice. And that costs more. Our vast infrastructure used by everybody in the state. You mentioned the field house. The field house is not just a regional center, it's a statewide center, particularly since the colleges stopped letting high schools use their facilities. And of course, good schools cost money. Ms. Donald made a great point. We have a new superintendent now. We need to make sure that we have policies that protect us against abuse by vendors. We need to make sure that our votes as a board are made to make sure that we make cost-effective decisions. And we need to make sure that the contracts that we engage in with people are bilateral binding on them as much as us. And I think that we can probably save money internally by engaging in more effective fiscal practices, contracting, whatever. But even as we do that, New Haven will always, unless something dramatic happens, be a city that has a tax base that's probably less than 50% of taxable properties. That's a lot. New Haven will always be a place where people come here for mental health services, drug addiction services. They come out of other towns to be homeless here. These are serious problems, and they're already affecting large cities like San Francisco, New York, and what have you. And the reason it's a moral question is because the people that can do something about it are typically governors and presidents and senators and what have you, because they can find money for emergencies. And I believe that the problems of our cities it's an emergency. And so Ms. Donna's right. We need to get our fiscal house in order. And that doesn't blame anybody. We can't go back and change the past, but we certainly can do better in the future. And we need to insist on getting the education cost sharing and the payment in lieu of taxes that were actually as a matter of record. And if some of these colleges like Quinnipiac and all these other colleges around us, if they want to help us, there are probably 2 communities next to New Haven that would have to have new high schools if it were not for our magnet program. We might need to take a look at that to determine whether or not the cost benefit ratio is in our favor. And then of course we pay more for special ed services because we have a larger population of children that have special needs. And we have no idea what the needs are of some of the kids who just got here yesterday. One of my relatives works at a very large high school in New Haven and indicated that in 1 week they got 100 new students and they all spoke several different languages. So that is much, much harder. Despite of all the good we do and all the good things we do for children, we have a much heavier load than many places. And when you have that type of load, you've got to have the revenue to deal with it. And so let's try to be more vigilant about what we do internally, and let's try to advocate politically for more money coming into this. We have a great delegation, and we have people that are not in our delegation, people like Doug McCrory and Bobby Gibson, who are fighting the same fight to try to bring some justice to cities and places that have large population of impoverished kids. I have full confidence that Dr. Negron and this board, that we've learned a lot this year. We won't make the same mistakes in the next year. We will tighten up our internal fiscal practices, and we will be able to show exactly how we're spending money, where we're spending it, and to what impact it's having. But I would say to the students, you could help us a whole lot if you could create a peaceful environment in the schools, if you can not destroy property, if you cannot vandalize, if you can show respect for your teachers and administrators. That in and of itself is a morale booster. So you need a movement too, to try to bring some civility within your own ranks, even as we try to work on those issues as adults. So again, I'm optimistic. I'm not by nature pessimistic. I'm by nature an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And again, I don't want to look back on today as the good old days if we can't address some of these problems going forward. I am finished, and we'll turn this over to somebody else.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to say thank you for the presentation, the conversation. I appreciated all the people that spoke in public comment. shining a light on some of the issues and bringing different perspectives than we sometimes hear about what the true effect of these cuts are. I also want to say I appreciate hearing about the process that the superintendent and the district is going through, working with the unions, working with staff, gathering ideas from the public, et cetera. I think that is the only way to go through with this. And I also appreciate the coverage from members of the press. We always have members of the press here, but I also appreciate the coverage that the press has been providing through various media, and not just for New Haven, but around the state. Seeing a lot of stories about how the end of the federal COVID money and the real realities that we're dealing with. I appreciate all that coverage. I also want to just say that some of the things that get lost in the mix here is when people talk about and have signs about how we need more librarians and more school nurses, et cetera. One thing that we do have in New Haven is, for your all's benefit, is a staffing guidelines report that was done by the administration and union representation and professionals of various kinds to talk about what is the reasonable workload based on national standards for a social worker in terms of number of cases that they can cover. How many librarians should be in a district school? How many on so many different levels? How many custodians? How many, I'm trying to remember, 38 or 39 different job categories. And they did that last year, and we updated it this year to see where there's been progress or where there's not going to be progress. We're going to do it again next year. It's posted on the website. Our communications person can provide the direct link. It's Finance and Operations Committee. It's done in the late winter. And it's posted there, and you can see. And the thing you're going to notice when you look at it is all the gaps that our budget doesn't have, because it doesn't have a librarian in every school. It doesn't have enough social workers. It doesn't have enough math teachers. It doesn't have enough paraprofessionals. It doesn't have enough in a lot of these different categories. And then it also does the math as to how much it would cost. And you're going to look at it and go, this is crazy. We can't put another 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars into New Haven schools. So then I ask you all to do another thing, which is to take a look at the Connecticut Department of Education school report cards and do the comparison work between New Haven schools, Bridgeport schools, Waterbury schools, and Westport. And you pick other schools. Don't forget the rural districts that are out there as well. And just do some comparisons, because if it's crazy for New Haven to have enough social workers to meet the needs, why is it not crazy for other districts to also have them? And we're often, when we're seeing in the coverage, this is where the problems are. Look at these poor cities, New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford. But let's also look and see what's also going really well in a lot of different school districts. And when you look at Staples High School in Westport, which the board's probably tired of me talking about, and compare it to Wilbur Cross, very similar in size, and they have 50 more certified staff members in there, you start to see why, when you look at their other data on the Connecticut report cards, why their test scores are better, why their graduation rates are better, why people graduate more on time. Because when there's problems or issues in those schools, they have people in those schools, professionals, dedicated, just like dedicated professionals work here. They just have more of them per student, which is a direct result of being able to spend $25,000 per year on per student, versus being able to spend 18, 19, or less in some districts in this state. State does great work. Our representatives do great work. Connecticut does so much better than so many other places in this country. Capital budgets just came out in terms of, work that needs to happen on the field house is going to be happening. Extra money going to that great adult education center. People work really hard, but we need to have these conversations about the multiple Connecticut's that exist in one of the wealthiest states that is in this country, and how it's expending their income. And is it a student of New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford, et cetera, worth less than these other students? Because the best state in this country can do better. And I know there's a lot of people that are working on making that happen, and we need to be ready. And I know the district's working on that so that we can put forward plans. It would probably be good for us in our planning to be looking at, is there something we can put forward? Like, if I know New Haven advocates at one point was putting forth the idea, hey, Yale, you have one of the largest library systems in the country. This is what it would cost to have a librarian in all our schools, and maybe taking a look at that. And it might also be good to be ready for our capital fund in New Haven, which is going to be taking a look at for the next round of capital funding, to be able to say, this is what these buildings need. Although on that one, it probably would be good if we had a list of roof repairs that need to happen, because apparently there might be a little bit of roof money around the city and maybe in the state. So this is very challenging. As somebody who's on the Finance and Operations Committee and has been on it for several years, there's just not a lot to cut. I think it was in public comment, somebody also said that. We've looked at it. We can always work better on processes and et cetera, but there's just not a lot there. And I'm hoping that we can continue to go through, and with the painful cuts that are probably going to be coming in terms of longer bus routes or less bus routes, less after-school activities, less people, more people in classrooms, less people to teach in those classrooms or to support those classrooms, that we're looking at the advocacy work that has been happening and that is going to continue to happen at the state level. And we just need to be able to tell those stories. So I just want to thank you for this presentation and thank you for the hard work that's going into it.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Mayor Elicker?
I know that there's been a lot of comments made, and this is not an unfamiliar topic to all of us, but I did want to weigh in a little bit. First of all, I'm sorry I was late. I understand there's a lot of meaningful public comment that I missed, and I had a conflict, but I hope that I can review it at another stage or hear things from folks after the meeting. The school finance system in the state is broken in my view, and I think a couple of things are really important to point out. One is the myth that we're wasteful about our spending in New Haven public schools. And that's not to say that there's not work to be done identifying cost savings and making sure that every dollar is spent efficiently. But if you look at the Connecticut School Finance Project and their analysis, we spend less on administrators than many other urban districts in the state average. If you look at what we spend per student, per pupil, it's around $20,000, and in places like Westport that Ms. Wilcox mentioned, they're spending $25,500, $25,500 on their students. New Canaan is spending around the same amount. Greenwich is spending upwards of $27,000 per student, and we're spending $20,000. And I would argue that it should be the reverse, right? We should be spending more on our students because our students, frankly, have much greater needs than students in other communities. And that's not to say that they shouldn't spend as much as they want on their kids, but we need to be spending more on our kids. And the part of the problem here, Connecticut, as Ms. Wilcox says, is doing great in a lot of ways, but we're in one of the most segregated states in the nation. And if you take Westport as an example, their grand list is larger than ours. So in other words, they have more taxable property in their city than New Haven does in our city, and we have high rises. They have a bigger farm to feed their people, and they have many fewer mouths to feed than we do in New Haven. And meanwhile, their taxes are more than half of what ours are. So if you have the same income and the same size house, in Westport, you spend much less money in taxes than in New Haven you do. And yet you get fewer services in our school, whether it's guidance counselors, librarians, et cetera, because we have much smaller of a pool of money to collect from our residents than a place like Westport does. So ultimately, we need a system-wide change that is fully funding ECS, but way beyond that, because fully funding ECS actually doesn't get us to where we need to be. And now I think is a real inflection point around the state. You're seeing a lot of municipalities, large municipalities, make major cuts. This is an opportunity for us to work together to have a real conversation about how we change the state system. And I just finished by, we've done a lot on the city level. We always need to do more. Over the past 2 years, we've increased Board of Education funding by $13 million, which is way more than in recent years. We always need to do more. If residents want us to pay more municipal taxes, let's have that conversation. But I think as a community, we need to come together to really push the state to rethink how we do education, because we are very different than most other states out there where we're so heavily reliant on real estate taxes. Our municipalities are so small that we're forcing a group of poor people to fund the schools. And that is not okay. That is not good for our children. And I think it's time we work really hard together, moving up to this next legislative session to confront this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Any further questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. Does that conclude your report, Dr. Negron?
Yes, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Hammonds. Okay, two really quick things for the president's report. First is another reminder that our first meeting in July, which is July 8th, will be at John Martinez Schools on James Street. Hopefully I'm not the one that shows up to this school. I'm appointing, at our last meeting, we discussed an ad hoc hearing committee meeting. I've chosen the members who are Dr. Joyner, Dr. Yarborough, Mr. Wilcox, and I will stay on just as an alternate, just in case one of them cannot attend the meeting. And our meeting will be on June 12th at 4:30 via Zoom. Okay, questions and comments on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to teaching and learning report. Dr. Joyner?
Madam, our report was the report that you got from Social Studies and Science. And we're working behind the scenes on policies. So I have no report other than the one that was given by our Social Studies coordinator and our science coordinator.
Great, thank you, Dr. Joyner. Facilities naming committee report, Dr. Joyner.
Okay, I got a call from Mrs. Pappas' daughter this morning, and she wanted me to make sure that I announce that the dedication of the library will be on the let me look at my calendar. I think I mentioned it last meeting. On June 28th at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna need a little help from our staff to create a program. She has some pictures of her mom that she'd like to have included in that. And I guess what I want to say about this is if you've been in any board meeting over the last 20, 30 years, Ms. Pappas was there. And she was also willing to give her time to anything that would help kids. This lady grew up in Mississippi. If you know your history, that's like growing up in Hades, particularly for a Black female or a Black person in general during the time that she was born. And the fact that she was able to come out of Mississippi and go to Detroit, meet a wonderful husband who happens to be Greek. At that time, those kind of relationships were frowned upon, and raise a beautiful family. I think we owe a little something to her to come and show the dedication. We won't have the signage by then, but we will have pictures, and I would like to put together a program, and I'm going to need a little help from the staff to do that. It's not going to be a lot, and if there's any way that we can have some coffee in or whatever, because her family's coming here from all over the country, from down south, from the Midwest, and what have you, to do this. So I'm hoping that we can all be there to make this statement about how we treat the people that give above and beyond the call of duty. And that's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Questions or comments for Dr. Joyner? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, governance report. Dr. Benitez?
Yes, good evening, board members and the public. Today we have two policies for first reading. One that was submitted in the fall, and we had to take some time to work on the revision. It's and that is the evaluation of instructional materials. I want to congratulate the teaching and learning team for the hard work on capturing the ideas and concerns that all board members had in the fall, and have now submitted a revision of this policy that seems to be more in agreement with what we discussed in the fall. I am submitting that for first reading today, and I'm hoping that everybody takes a look at it. And if you have any concerns, you make sure that you communicate that to us prior to the second reading. That is policy 61.1. We also are submitting policy 6146.2, which is statewide proficiency mastery examination, and it just makes sure that we are all in agreement that our students participate in the statewide proficiency mastery examinations, and that accommodations are made accordingly. That also is a first reading, and again, I am asking that everyone takes a look at it, and if you have any concerns, you let us know. Other than that, we continue to work on policies that are submitted by the committees, and I want to thank Dr. Joyner and Matt Wilcox, and of course, Ms. Downer, for their support in the revisions and also in the reviews of policies, and everyone who in one way or the other are supporting this work. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Questions or comments for Dr. Benitez?
Madam Chair,
Dr. Joyner?
I want to thank Dr. Benitez for the work she does and the example she sets. I was watching a congressional hearing. I watch a lot of them. And I would say if only they ran the meeting like some of our committee chairs ran the meeting. If only they had the real concern for effective policy as opposed to name calling and backbiting. Dr. Benitez, you're doing a great work, and I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Seeing no further questions or comments, we'll move on to Finance and Operations Report. Mr. Wilcox?
Okay, thank you. This will be brief. We did meet. Primary thing that we had other than the action items was a budget presentation. I anticipate we'll have another budget presentation on our next meeting on Monday to hear what further efforts have been made in terms of closing the budget gaps. And so the other thing that we did is we did hear that there is a group of city, corp council, purchasing, and school district people have been identified to come together to have a meeting to rectify our core purchasing policy in relation to the city's purchasing policies. And so it sounds like they're going to have the right people in the room, and I look forward to hearing on Monday about when those folks are going to be meeting in the room to have those discussions so we can see what progress is happening. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Questions or comments? Okay, Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox.
So both the Head Start and the citywide school building committee report are going to be very brief because we've not met since our last meeting. So for Head Start, our next meeting is scheduled for June 20th. And for citywide school building committee, our next meeting is scheduled for this Thursday, June 13th.
Questions or comments for Mr. Wilcox? Okay, citywide school building report.
I just mentioned that our next meeting is this Thursday, June 13th.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Food Service Task Group report, Dr. Yarborough.
Thank you. The Food Service Task Group meets once a month, and we are going to meet this coming month. The group continues to in particular, I want to name the Food Gap Group that continues to plan for school breaks. And in particular, they are partnering with community organizations and student groups from universities to help fund the summer food gap. And the district is also working on summer meal planning for the upcoming summer break. And I look forward to receiving updates at this upcoming food gap meeting or food service task force meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Yarborough. Questions or comments for Dr. Yarborough? It's okay. Okay, seeing none, that was our last item on the agenda, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Okay, Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.